Hi guys, my name is Michael Christodoulides. I'm the US data center team lead here at Empiric. Empiric Insights is our video series where our team sits down with experts across different specialties that we recruit for to hear their guidance and perspectives on current influences shaping the industry. Today I'll be joined by Sean Mulligan. Really excited for the conversation and to learn more on his insights. Can't wait to dive into the conversation. Hi Sean, could you briefly outline your career within the data center industry?
Greetings, my name is Sean Mulligan and I'm a builder. 50-year career in the trade, starting as a laborer all the way through carpentry subcontractor, contractor, C-suite. Lately I've been building very big data centers, and after a career of building for all the biggest and best people, I'm now an industry consultant. So it's been an unusual career. I didn't set out to be a construction guy. I'm a college educated with a background in environmental science and science journalism. I've worked in many different fields, technical fields, journalism, writing, but I've always made my money building things, I guess because I know how to put things together. I grew up on a farm. We learned how to do by ripping things apart and rebuilding them, and just picked up skills all the way along the way. You could say that my career has been continuous on-the-job training, something I continue to the day. I love to learn, love to know how everything works and goes together, and that's led me to this point of speaking with you.
Perfect. What advice would you give to construction managers looking to work on big data center projects?
Big data center projects are certainly a huge challenge. It requires that someone has broad knowledge of construction in general, knows how to speak to all the different trades and the lingo and the language thereof, because you're going to find it in the documents. You need to be able to read and comprehend a set of drawings and the big, thick construction documents that lay out all the specs and what is expected to. We're building a big machine with lots of working pieces that have to run 24/7 for 20 years straight. It's a high challenge with a lot of quality and checks and balances that all have to be met properly to be accepted by the client.
How has the data center sector changed during your career, and which shift have most influenced how projects are delivered today?
Sure, they've become much more complex, and we've gone from the earlier days. There wasn't all the digital tools that we have today. Everything was laid out on paper. Over the years, we've had the adoption of construction management programs, various electronic programs for safety, for lockout, tagout, for using cameras and drones to capture things. And now everything has become digital. We start with digital models, BIM and Revit. We do a construction model all the way through that becomes a digital twin, where we work out all the differences, clash detection, and this is the way of the future. More automation, more software, probably less people, less bodies. We're trying to automate as much as we can. So I'd say to learn everything you can, not just about construction, but about digital technology and how that can assist in these projects.
What are the criteria for a successful data center career?
I always tell people you have to want it. You have to go in there knowing that it's going to be challenging, it's going to be tough, but that you have the attitude, some say the grit, to make it through the challenging and tough situations. We work around the clock in all kinds of weather and all types of environments. We have a lot of challenges. All construction does, let's face it, but these big data center sites that are out away from everywhere, you have to be self-sufficient. And as a general contractor, you're controlling the whole site. You're the big daddy, taking care of everybody, taking care of all the subs and the trades and the owners and all of their folks that come to visit the site, and making sure everybody's got food and water and bathrooms and a place to park and the logistics to know where to go. It's a huge coordination issue, and you're constantly juggling. So you need to stay up on everything. And a lot of people say it's drinking from a fire hose because there's so much information and challenges coming, and the schedule is all important. You're always trying to meet the milestone dates that have been agreed to before you put a shovel in the ground. in dealing with weather equipment delays. Maybe your subcontractors don't have enough manpower on the job, and change orders come through. These projects get changed on the fly, and you have to work through the change management process while continuing the schedule. This is the world that you're going to step into. And like I said, you have to want to take it on. This isn't sitting back and having some kind of easy work. This is the hard stuff.
Having worked for both general contractors and hyperscalers, what would you say the biggest differences are regarding project delivery, risks, and talent within these organizations?
Well, we're all one big team. Everybody's working for the client. They're paying the bill. As the builder, as the GC, it's your responsibility to deliver the project, but you're delivering it hand in hand. You have to work with everybody in the project, the owner's team, the authorities having jurisdiction, third-party inspectors, all of the various suppliers, the OFCI vendors, as well as your whole team of subcontractors and multi-tier, and manage the safety and the quality while adhering to schedule and budget. It's a big ongoing challenge for everybody, but the client expects that you're serving them and the project and doing your very best. When you're on the owner's team, you can observe and report, but when you're the general contractor, you're responsible for everything. You tell people what to do and have to resolve issues. And, if somebody's underperforming or not performing, you're required to replace them or find a way to augment them. So there are differences between the contractor side and the owner side, but it all needs to work together as a team. The worst situation is contractors and clients come to disagreements that lead to money not being paid and bad blood and email bombs being lobbed between trailers and a breakdown in communications. I've seen it happen, and it really is disheartening. So avoid that at all costs, to stay upbeat, stay positive, and work towards the best end.
Land and power availability are now critical constraints. How are these shaping site selections and project timelines?
Well, land is a finite resource, and power has not kept up with the demand over the last few years for gigawatts and gigawatts of AI data centers. It takes 10 or so years to permit and build generating facilities, transmission lines, to the point where you can land a substation at a new facility. So most of the low-hanging fruit in terms of easily available power is gone at this point. There's very little what we call stranded power anywhere in this country or North America. The answer has been for these new projects that are being announced or starting to being built, is to bring your own power, meaning that we're going to tap into the natural gas pipelines. There is gas available, and build gas-powered engines, power plants ourselves to power our own data centers. So that has become the new modality, to build your own power while waiting for the grid to catch up.
What would you say the biggest bottlenecks are in the data center industry, and where do most organizations often underestimate complexity?
There's so many. We went through the pandemic with supply shortages, which are still short. The lead times for equipment can be a year, 2 years, or more. The organizations that have been prepared for that by pre-purchasing big pieces of equipment, is what we call owner furnished contractor installed OFCI equipment, are better prepared. We've had shortages of steel, of copper, of even little things like tie wraps to hold cables together and cable trays. So one needs to constantly scramble and make sure that they have all their parts and pieces. So that's on the supply side. On the labor side, we are short skilled trades in the country, skilled electricians and mechanical engineers and controls engineers. And they're not being trained fast enough to replace those who are retiring, like me. I'm a retired person, 50 years, I'm a consultant. I get calls all the time to go back to the field. It's not in my ballpark, but there's a huge demand for talent out there. How those people are going to step up and be the next generation of data center builders is being worked out as we speak. There's a lot of upskilling, uptraining. But again, as I said earlier, you have to want it. There are some people that could become very good middle management, superintendents and project managers, but they're in comfortable trade positions, foremen. They like where they're at, and they don't want to take on the additional responsibility of being responsible for everything. They like just being responsible for their little piece of the puzzle.
Looking ahead, where do you see the data center market going?
Going to keep building, building, building from what we see with all the announcements and the money flooding in. Bigger and bigger sites, the rollout of NVIDIA superclusters, more advances in liquid cooling, many more gas engines running. The current administration has taken off all the safeguards on pollution controls, et cetera, so it's much easier to build power plants right next to your site. Eventually, we'll get these small modular reactors that people are talking about sited alongside to power the data centers. But you're talking, ever more years away before we start seeing them significantly taking over for the power thing. In the meantime, you're just going to see these larger and larger projects. I saw one announced the other day, Project Jupiter in southern New Mexico. It's like 144,000 acres, $165 billion of revenue bonds being sold to finance this massive project, which again is going to tap into the abundant natural gas in the area to power its engines to run the facility. This is the scale, which is just unprecedented. And this is happening around the world as different countries want their data sovereignty. They want their internal data to stay within the country borders. Even as folks are starting to venture and putting data centers underwater and up in space. It's an amazing expansion of our communications driven by AI, which requires vastly more compute than the old standard cloud services.
Virginia's been one of the powerhouses of the US when it comes to the data center market. Do you see any states overtaking Virginia? And if so, what reasons do you have behind this?
I was going to say permitting. This has fairly easy permitting to basically build what you want. So you see, I think Dallas is the number 2 region after Northern Virginia for data centers. But Austin, San Antonio, Western Texas, out by El Paso, these are all big growth areas. And obviously there's huge amounts of land available. It's just a matter of getting your contracts for power or natural gas to build your own power. And that seems to be what's happening at the moment.
How can a busy professional keep up with news and advancements in the industry currently?
Well, besides what you hear on a job site from constant conversation with all the folks that come and go, I rely on LinkedIn for most of my connections. The algorithms feed me almost nothing but data center industry news because that's what I've been looking for and searching for. And over the years, it knows to craft my feed and the things I subscribe to, the data center news, et cetera, that feeds me all the current information about new builds, new technologies, people who are on the move. It's a very small world. We see kind of a little bit of a revolving door of people that serve a period of time with one company or employer and are offered opportunities in others. So there's a lot of movement and advancement. Those who can go to the conferences, there's an awful lot of data center conferences where you can get a very quick overview of where we're at from the speakers, from the panels, from the exhibits, from talking to others, all those little conversations in the hallways. So I would say those are the major ways to stay up to date with what's going on in the data center world.
Is there anything we haven't covered in today's conversation that you want people to know, whether it's hiring managers, whether it's professionals in the space, as a whole from the data center industry?
The type of person they're looking for has good construction knowledge, but also the ability to learn, to adapt, to grow, to accept new ways of doing things and to figure it out. A lot of the old timers you've heard were like resistant to change. They like the way things were done. They don't want to learn something new. That doesn't fly in today's world. The contractors and the client are demanding that people stay up to date, knowledgeable, are able to read and comprehend complex documents, understand the legal terms of shall and will and ensure, pay as much attention to safety and quality as to the bottom line, and are non-combative, willing to say yes instead of saying no. That's where we're at and what we need for the new generation of construction managers and professionals. I'm interested to hear what we can get out of this. I don't know if it serves your clients or your interest enough, but this has been my experience with trying to bring people up, and I've certainly mentored several people up to higher positions, but not all are either willing or capable of doing it. It is a challenge, and I don't think just anybody can do it. I think you need to have the ability to learn and to take in a large amount of information and not be overwhelmed, and not to be able to shut down, but to be able to step back and breathe and do the work. That's one of my favorite sayings to people out in the field who are griping, complaining. I just say, do your work.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people are trying to avoid doing work. That doesn't fly. The work has to get done. And that's not just out in the field with the trades, but in the trailers. There's a huge amount of quality work and documentation and meeting preparation and communications that happens. You need to be able to stay on top of all that. If I see somebody with an inbox full of unanswered messages, it blows my mind. How can you possibly have unread messages in your email? Somebody's trying to communicate and you're not answering them. Not okay.
Of course. And I think, at the rate of, the sector sort of how it's growing, it's going to take everyone to put 110% in. From my perspective and my knowledge of working within this space, it's not slowing down anytime soon. And it's going to take everyone to kind of chip in and work away, and it's going to evolve. It already has to a certain degree. And I think the next 5 to 10 years will be a testament to, where it's going to go and how it will reshape. And people need to keep up with the times, because a lot of people want to kind of do the same work. They don't want to evolve. They don't want to change. But, if they want to get these buildings up as quick as possible to just compete with how much computing and AI demands there are, the shift will have to be a quick one.
It's not going to be quick. There is no quick fix. That's the problem. So what it takes, from my perspective, is two or threefold. For one, we have to stop being exclusionary and be able to accept talent in from wherever in the world that talent exists. And frankly, from my experience, there are folks coming from very well-educated countries, I dare say better educated than the United States, who are looking for that opportunity and have the drive to work hard. And we should be welcoming them instead of feeling threatened by them. And certainly some of the old school tradespeople are threatened by somebody that's smarter and works harder and faster than they do. It's too bad. Get with the program. This is not about protectionism. This is about, we have to do what works for the client. And that's what the client wants to see. Secondly, we can't change our education system overnight. There's not enough new technical schools popping up. So we're looking to technology. What can technology do for us? That's why I'm working with Cumulus, the technology that can take a very green newbie person and put smart tools in their hands where they're led through what to do with that tool. The person is now the dumb element and the machine is the software is the smart element. But you still need a human to turn a wrench. And the wrench will tell you when you've turned it enough. So that's one of the ways that we're going to solve it, by putting people out in the field with automation and tools that will basically give them that kind of on-the-job training that, like, I had to get through years and years and years of interaction with grumpy old men.
And I think just from, the points that you just made there as well, what I'm seeing a lot, especially when I'm speaking to clients in the space, they want candidates or they want professionals that have already worked on data centers. But, one of the biggest bottlenecks as well, there's not enough professionals. If you're looking at, kind of MEP functions or commissioning functions, there's not enough talent that have already done data center projects. And, I'm always trying to tell clients, if you want to kind of beat the curve to get the best people on board, you're going to have to look at professionals that have, 5 to 10 years MEP exposure and a background where they can come on board and, perhaps hit the ground running. But the pickier and the clients, sometimes it's also a case where they're not able to hire the right staff, so it kind of puts them behind, and then their schedules are behind, and it's a domino effect.
Oh, I see this, but everyone starts out not being a data center person until they've been on a data center.
Yeah.
And look, I probably had the advantage of a very long ramp. I mean, the first data center, or at least first building generators and battery backup and things like that was in the early 90s. And it's been a long road, and it's evolved. I worked in the kind of old school raised floor, messy racks with wires all over the place. And I've done the rebuilds and the upgrades as kind of the computer revolution and the internet and all took off in the mid 90s. Things accelerated. And I've worked through it over all those years. Like I said, my old school starting with paper and paper schedules and paper, file faxes and how you managed all your information. And then learning the programs. And some of those early construction management programs are horrendous. I mean, the earliest version of CMIC that we adopted with Lotus Notes for email client is horrible compared to what we have today. But we struggled through it. Like we're at, okay, because the company could see that this is the way of the future. The tools have gotten better and better and better. And frankly, the tools today are keep getting better. And there's a few big winners, obviously, like Autodesk and Procore, and people are all trying to plug into those environments. So the successful construction manager needs to master those digital environments, but also keep an eye on the physical and understand the physical properties of things and logistics and laydown and how much space things require. And when you're doing your plans to understand the sequencing. And you don't get that often from the software. That comes from real life construction experience of what works out in the physical world and what doesn't. So you need to combine the both. So I'm a big advocate for very well schooled and trained construction professionals. And to those clients who insist that somebody have all this experience, I'd say, look, building your data center is construction as usual. It's digging in the dirt, it's putting things in, footings and foundations and piers and steel and precast or IMP, putting on a roof, putting up sheetrock and drywall, and sprinklers and electric and all that. The big part is the receiving and setting and commissioning of OFCI equipment. Your generators, transformers, switchgear, PDUs, understanding the flow of power, understanding lockout, tagout, energization, where all the dangers are, how much time it's required for commissioning, and when your documentation needs to be in. So you're writing your subcontractors all day long to have the documentation in weeks before startup and commissioning so that it can be reviewed by the commissioning agents and the engineers. Because if they don't review it, they're not going to let you start up. And trades are of the mindset that, as-builts come at the end of the job. At this point, they come before you can start up the equipment. It's a whole different mindset that you have to be on, inform people, this is what I'm going to be looking for, and then keep reminding them and push them. And that's why some of these digital tools are so important, because they're actually creating the documentation in the cloud while you go. It's just not somebody going back in with double checking with a torque wrench and checking things off on a clipboard. We're moving beyond that. We need to eliminate extraneous extra work and get it done once and right and acceptable. So that's where we're going. Are we going to have robots, besides little layout robots and Spot the dog roaming around with a camera? I mean, we have that. It's good. The drones are good. I mean, drone deploy and taking pictures. Security cameras that have AI built in that can count, concrete trucks entering or look for safety hazards. This is all good. The fact that we can give all of the employees on the job site, all the subcontractors, a badge that tracks when they come and go and where they are, and be able to ping them all, and be able to put an app on their cell phones to tell everybody to come to muster or to actually find where they are if there's an emergency. This is all good stuff, all good uses of technology. So we're going to see more and more of that.
Is there anything else you wanted to cover, Sean, or anything we maybe didn't discuss?
I have no answer for how to generate a new class of construction professionals. I know what the clients are looking for. And, for their own teams, they don't have their own folks on. That's why there's a big market for, owners rep firms to provide professionals. So frankly, they will poach them. Ones that have been good and working for them as owners rep. Eventually, my friend that was my roommate down in Boynton, he just went on board full time as a Microsoft employee after being, a V dash for 8 years. And I finally said, I guess you've done your time as an owner's rep. You can come on board now. So that's a pathway through an owner's rep firm, contract work, but no guarantees there either.
I think more now than ever, I'm speaking to so many professionals that want to take that leap to the owner's side, but it's a completely different ballgame. Whether you're a subcontractor, a consultancy, or all the way up to kind of, the sort of top of the tree, being a sort of general contractor, they all serve different purposes. And I think, working for the hyperscaler, working for the kind of owners at the top, it's become glamorous. It's become kind of a rock star lifestyle where everybody wants to be there, and that's what's going to push the data center market. But, it all comes with hard work. So it's dependent on how many people really want to put in the hard yards to get to that point, because everybody talks about having this dream. Everybody talks about having aspirations to want to get to where they want to be, but a lot of people don't put in the hard yards to get there. So, it's left for the ones that really work hard and, really want to kind of push their careers going forward.
Oh, exactly. And look, I'm retired, but is there an offer that could get me to come out of retirement and do a massive project for the right title and the right amount of money? Possibly.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm enjoying my life the way it is, and
Of course.
I don't need to go and live in a construction trailer in Wyoming for weeks on end. Just you can hire my brain, you just can't put my body through all
Yeah,
that.
no, that's the way. But I mean, even now, you've worked in the space for so long. I'm sure you've helped so many people along the way, and it kind of, you get to that point where you can become a teacher. You can master your craft, and you've definitely shown that you have, and you've worn many different hats in the space. You've probably built, I don't want to know how many sort of different data centers, how many positives, how many negatives. And I think it's that point now where it's, you kind of give back, and, you sit back and kind of look at all the good things you've done, and, how you can help the next generation, because that's what it will come down to. There's a lot of people that have the titles and they've worked in the space, and they feel like, they're the best person. Nobody could ever be better than them. But, speaking to someone like yourself, you always want to give back. And I think that's one of the main things to get the next generation to the next point. Otherwise, who's going to get them up to par? Who's going to instill that faith and belief into them? So it's people like yourself that are, wearing the capes when no one else is.
So I get job descriptions
Yeah.
for these projects, director or VP or project executive, whatever they might be, and they're pages and pages of bullet point. You can do all these things and mentor and things, and you can win work and write the contracts, and it's just an overwhelming ask. These are all the tasks that need to be done. And I go, well, yeah, I agree. Those are all the tasks that need to be done in the sector, but you're putting them all on one person. That's the work of an entire team. They seem to think that there's this idea of there's a superhuman that can do it all, with aplomb, and that's where the burnout happens. People have to remember that this industry still has high rates of burnout. People are being told to work, 12, 14-hour days, 7 days a week, overnight shifts. And the substance abuse and suicide are still very real because of the push, and the neediness of the clients. So yeah, everybody needs it. I need it. That constant push is against human nature. You can do it for a little bit, but if that's the constant, you start a project, you're already behind. You're going towards your milestone dates and you're not going to make it. And there's just threats, the financial threats, being fired threats. We talk about carrots and sticks. People are all too often willing to use the stick rather than incentives or the sanity of having
Yeah.
a reasonable schedule to begin with. There is no such thing as a reasonable schedule. They're all unreasonable.
Of course, and it's crazy because, I was speaking to a commissioning manager the other day, and this person was doing 15, maybe 16-hour days non-stop, and they were having to do, like a 2-hour commute from just one way. And it's, it kind of gets to that point where I was speaking to them, and I was like, how are you not worn out? How do you want to keep doing this? And I think the space isn't slowing down whatsoever. There's a lot of deadlines that, from the owner's side want to be met, but, they have to kind of take a step back and understand the reality of these deadlines. Are they just putting them out there to make people feel stressed so they can get the projects done? Or, sometimes it's kind of a case where they need to step back and understand, are they going to be able to do this respectively with, the time constraints, with everything else that's going on. And just quickly, I wanted to sort of, ask a question. I know, the US at the moment, they're definitely the powerhouse of the data center market globally. What other regions around the world do you think are going to, compete? I don't think anywhere will get past America in terms of how much, data centers are being built, but also how much computing and sort of storage they have. But what other sort of areas around the world do you think will compete?
Well, not going to be as large as the U.S. You're right, but there's going to be big push up into Canada. You
Sure.
look at Kevin O'Leary and his Wonder Valley. That's happening. You look at Saudi Arabia because they're just trying to turn all their money into compute. Even though the middle of the desert's not the best place to build a data center, they don't care.
Of course.
China is obviously rising, has a lot of data centers, and is building more, and is building the power to power them as well. So you have to look like who has the power. Africa, not so much at this point. There's some going on here and there, but for that huge continent, not all that much. Europe would like to build more, needs to build more, but unlike the U.S., they are more constrained by permitting and community opposition and very intricate deals for what it would take to build things, hence more expensive. Where else looking, surprised that Russia doesn't have more, but Russia is not all that big of a player. They have some, of course. So that's it. You're going to continue to see Asia, which includes China, Singapore, Malaysia, because they're just strategic points on the global subsea cable network. It'll be interesting to see. But yeah, you're right. As of now, most of the capital is going to the U.S. because it's probably the easiest place to build, easiest place to get a permit, easiest place to get power. Still, even though people say, "Oh, power constraints." Well, we do have resources. It's the grid's being upgraded, new generations being built. They're working out new tariff rates to insulate the public from higher electric rates to pay for the upgrades needed for data centers, who all say, "Oh, we want to pay our own way," but they're not saying exactly what that is. So I still think the U.S. is going to be the biggest market, followed by Europe and Asia. You're probably not being asked to supply professionals to China, I'm guessing, but they have their own. But China is growing their own crop of engineers. They don't need outside help. They're building their own. So that's going to be the story for the rest of my life. We're going to watch a strong China. That'll be our major competitor to the U.S. And hopefully the U.S. doesn't weaken itself and tear itself apart with the divisiveness that's going on around some of the actions that are happening in the country. But, data center sites are trying to be immune to all that. They're a world unto themselves. And everybody's, you put on your blinders, you stay focused. We're all on one team here. Whatever your personal, political beliefs are, this is not the place for them. We're heads down, focused on getting a job done.
Yeah, you've got the nail on the head, and you're spot on. Well, look, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it, and everybody listening to this will definitely, take something from it. I think, yeah, it's a interesting space to be in, and I think, yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting space to see where it goes. So thank you for your time today, Sean. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Happy to do it.
Thank you to Sean for joining us today on our Empiric Insights. Really, really good conversation. Was able to learn a lot about the industry. Please give him a follow on LinkedIn if you haven't already, and take care.